This is a story of two countries. A country which has taught the world about leading happy life, and a country which is in a mode to destroy the world. This is a story of two neighboring countries. This is a story of two countries which share the Himalayas. The story of India and China. India and China. Both are considered to be the largest superpower of the Asian continent. But the boundary dispute between the two countries is always alive. Why Galwan? Why is China eyeing on Galwan? What could be the reason? Is it China's insecurity? The Galwan conflict clearly depicts the China's fear on India's action plan, capturing the Aksai Chin region, which we had lost to China in 1962. India is securing its borders, building roads. Why has Galwan become a crucial point for China? The answer is insecurity. The Chinese insecurity. Beijing feels threatened because of India's construction in the Galwan area. What do you think is India constructing? A network of feeder roads. Yes, India is constructing roads. They all lead to 224 km Shok Daulat Beg Oldie Road, commonly referred to as the SDBO Road. Daulat Beg Oldie, being the northernmost corner of Indian territory in Ladakh, also houses the world's highest landing strip, the DBO landing strip. The Indian Air Force has successfully landed the C-17 Global Master here. China watched this with bated breath, and the implications were significant. In case of a war or a conflict, India can now ferry thousands of troops to this region within hours. China's fear intensified when India built a bridge across the Shok River. The idea was to facilitate Indian troop movement in the region. Even before China could digest this, India began construction of another bridge, and this one across the Galwan Nala. It is 7.5 km from the LAC. This concrete bridge is a part of feeder road project and replaces an existing wooden structure. The new bridge will now allow heavy military movement. It was this bridge that triggered the latest standoff. China, on the other hand, extremely nervous about this, deployed its troops along the LAC, a stunt to put pressure on India to stop road construction. This is what it all comes down to: the SDBO road, the feeder roads and the landing strip. They've all cemented India's dominance in the region, and now China is panicking. Its biggest fear is India's recovery of Aksai Chin. As I said earlier, it was an Indian territory that China captured in 1962. The Galwan area was among the biggest crucial points during the 1962 war too. Less than 60 years later, Galwan has become a crucial point again. India has strategic advantage in this region. On ground, it can mobilize troops quickly. The Indian Air Force dominates the skies. India's borders are secure, and this is why China cannot seem to keep calm. What do you think is the worst military mistake a country can make? Start a war when it cannot afford a one. There's also another question. Can China afford an all-out war with India? The simple answer is no. The reasons are various and many, and I list out some of them for you. Military deployment. Military deployment is the biggest challenge for China right now. It is already engaged in too many fronts. Second, China is already at war at home. And third, China cannot afford to fire right now. There's already too much global heat against it. Let me start with military deployment. What a country needs during war is quickly round up its forces at the front line. This is the last thing China can do right now. China is fighting fire at several fronts as we speak. Its ground forces, its navy, its warplanes are all engaged. Chinese fighter jets are busy intruding into Taiwan's airspace. Its ships are at the South China Sea, trying to fortify its claims over the waters and the islands. In this region alone, in the South China Sea, Beijing is currently engaged, brawling over 6 countries. Taiwan, Vietnam, the Philippines, Brunei, Indonesia, and Malaysia. The People's Liberation Army is creating artificial islands here, carrying out exercises. China is also directing Japan the wrong way East China Sea. And we have Hong Kong, its pro-democracy movement. Last thing, Beijing wants is an uprisal in Hong Kong, while its forces are engaged with India. China is still fighting to legitimize its claim on Tibet. China is advocating for reunification of Outer Mongolia. Also, China is fighting the second wave of coronavirus in Beijing. Can the PLA compromise any of these fronts to engage in a full-blown battle with India? Let's say hypothetically they do. Will the Chinese government be able to fund a war right now? Look at the Chinese economy. Its GDP is as low as 1.8% in the first quarter of 2020, down 6.8% year on year. Also, China's reputed industries are moving out of China. Companies are leaving the country. Its manufacturing has slipped. Demand too. There is a 8.5% decline in imports. The Wuhan virus has hammered the Chinese economy. People are out of jobs. They're struggling to make ends. And the last thing China wants to do right now is a war. Beijing is already fighting one. China is in trade war with US and Australia. According to the report, the trade war with US alone cost China $35 billion in the first half of 2019. Among the hardest hit sectors were computers and office machinery. Fighting India would mean losing out Indian markets too. And there is a lot of money at stake, $74 billion, and this is exports alone. There's another reason why Beijing cannot afford a war with India. During a war, you need allies, and China has none. The debt-bearer Pakistan and the new friend Nepal do not really count. India, on the other hand, has support of the world's leading powers. If China fires a shot at Ladakh, it will lambast from all fronts. Its economy will tank. Its people will suffer. And it will be diplomatically isolated. And we all know Chinese leadership may not survive such a blow. Can it really afford to risk all of this? Amidst all of this, Indian and Chinese soldiers clashed, and there were casualties. And the whole world wants to know the wear and tear of relationship between India and China. Yes, India and China share so much. Geographically, we share 4,000 kilometers of borderlines. Historically, we share 2,000 years of relationship. Yes, we fought a war in 1962 and still live in the shadow of the event. But the shadow pales in comparison with the bright arc of peace and stability. The two militaries have machine guns, artilleries and tanks, yet they chose to use fists and stones. This fact itself says a lot about restraints exercised on both sides. And the whole world wants to know why the Indian side went to confront the Chinese without carrying guns. What was the reason for such decisions made by the Indian armed forces? The reason for the same is a slew of agreements India and China have signed in an effort to keep the tension at the border under check. Both the nations have signed borders agreements in 1993, 1996 and 2005, which defines the activities which are allowed and not allowed along the line of actual control between India and China. Why do you think China loves Digital India? India has been growing very rapidly as the internet penetration has risen exponentially in the past few years, all thanks to cheap data. 75 out of every 100 mid-range mobile phones used in India are by Chinese manufacturers. Yet apps and games we use are from China. They not only add a source of income to China, but also gives rise to a question of a safety of our data and other privacy concerns. We are at a war our soldiers cannot win. How can you help India win this war? Boycott China. Support Indian brands. Be more aware of what you buy and where it comes from. Know what hardware you buy and what apps you install and the potential risk involved with the same. Ask for Indian substitutes or research online before you buy made in China products. Be aware of misleading claims which may say made in India while it's just assembled in India. Change is not going to happen overnight. The sooner we start, the sooner we get there. Why can't we sacrifice our wants while some sacrifice their lives? I've always been wanted to shed a light on what China is doing and what its potential plans are for a while. I've tried my best and put it in a very concise manner. Give it a thought, try and share with as many people as possible, since each one of us can make a real difference.